Chapter 4 Taxation and Government Spending by Daniel J. Mitchell.
When nations such as the United Kingdom became prosperous, government was very small. Throughout the 1800s, public sector spending accounted for only 10% of economic output, not only in Britain, but also in other rapidly growing Western nations. This meant low taxes. Indeed, most nations in Europe and North America did not have income taxes until about 100 years ago. Today, by contrast, governments are much larger. In the United Kingdom, public sector spending now consumes about 50% of economic output. Taxes have also climbed dramatically, though not as fast as spending. This is why Britain, like most other nations, has enormous debts. Is bigger government good for the economy? Every bit of government spending winds up in somebody's pocket, so it sometimes seems as if government is a big Santa Claus that provides things like roads and healthcare. Others just look at the taxes that pay for government spending and conclude that government takes money from people and is a barrier to growth. But it is a mistake to look at only one side of the equation. It is important to look at the costs and benefits of both taxes and spending. This makes the analysis a bit complicated. Government spending can be good or bad for economic performance, depending on both how the money is being spent and how it is being collected. Economic research suggests, however, that government is far too big in all industrialized nations. When the public sector is too large, economists say that labor and capital are being misallocated, which is a more complicated way of saying that money is being diverted from more productive uses. A large government also means that tax burden is more likely to be excessive, meaning high tax rates that discourage work, saving, investment, and entrepreneurship. Big public sectors are also financed by borrowing, which diverts money from the private sector. All of these things, spending, taxes, and borrowing, are a burden on the economy. This means lower growth, higher unemployment, and less competitiveness.
Less government, but also smarter government.
This does not mean that all government spending is bad for the economy or that there should be no taxes. Public sector spending, for instance, can either be beneficial or harmful. Spending on public goods such as police protection can help an economy prosper by creating the conditions for markets to function. Capital spending on roads and schools can also generate benefits if done properly. That's the good news. The bad news is that economic performance is undermined by transfer spending on things like welfare benefits and consumption spending on things such as healthcare. Unfortunately, most government spending today is devoted to transfers and consumption.
Good tax policy.
The same analysis applies to taxation. Taxes presumably are never good for growth, for instance, but some taxes do more damage than others. The simple rule for economists is that government should raise revenue in a way that minimizes the negative impact on the economy. These three principles are a good guide.
High tax rates are more damaging than low tax rates.
Politicians often say that they want higher taxes on things such as tobacco because they want to discourage smoking. Setting aside whether government should be trying to control people's lives, the politicians are correct about the economic impact. Taxation is an effective way of discouraging behavior, and high tax rates obviously hurt more than low tax rates. The same analysis applies to taxes on work, entrepreneurship, and other forms of productive behavior. But since economic growth only occurs when more people earn more income, this means that it is very important to keep tax rates low, particularly for personal income tax and corporate income tax.
Extra taxes on saving and investment are very costly.
Every economic theory suggests that saving and investment today is necessary to have more prosperity in the future. Yet many governments impose extra layers of tax on income that is saved and invested, which is sometimes referred to as double taxation. Taxes on dividends, interest, and capital gains, as well as wealth taxes and inheritance taxes, make it much less attractive for people to save and invest. This means the tax rate on income that is saved and invested is much higher than the tax rate on income that is consumed. Not surprisingly, people respond with more consumption and less saving and investment. This hurts long-run economic performance.
Special tax loopholes reward economic inefficiency.
Many tax systems are riddled with credits, deductions, shelters, exclusions, loopholes, and other special arrangements. These create complexity and enable corruption, but they also have bad economic consequences. In a normal market, people are rewarded for making investments that generate the most wealth. But if the tax system discriminates in favor of certain activities, that lures entrepreneurs and investors to put money in projects that produce tax benefits rather than to invest money in projects that produce growth. To boost prosperity, politicians should design tax systems that recognize these three principles. The flat tax would be a good approach, and this simple and fair tax system has improved growth in Eastern Europe. But the flat tax is good because it generally means a low tax rate, not because there is a flat tax rate. Until recently, Iceland had a flat tax rate, but the rate was nearly 37%. Nations such as Singapore, which has a progressive tax system with a top rate of 20%, had much better tax regimes.
Analyzing the costs and benefits.
Determining whether various types of government spending are good or bad for the economy requires an analysis of the costs and benefits. The following set of questions can be thought of as an economic test for government programs. If all the answers are positive, then that particular program or activity has a positive impact on economic performance.
1. Does the program or activity produce any benefits?
All government spending winds up in somebody's pocket, so there is a benefit in a narrow sense. But the relevant issue is whether a program or activity generates any benefits to broader society. In some cases, such as a new road in a congested area, there can be significant benefits. In other cases, such as a welfare benefit that subsidizes joblessness, there is a negative impact on society.
2. If a program or activity generates benefits, are those benefits larger than the benefits that would result if the money was left in the private sector?
At any point in time, there is a limit to the amount of labor and capital that is available in an economy. If government spending causes these resources to be used for something with relatively little economic value, such as building a wind farm, then those same resources will not be available to the productive sector of the economy. And if the benefits of the wind farm are less than the additional output that the private sector would have produced, then the net effect of the government spending would be negative.
3. If a program or activity generates benefits that are larger than those generated by the private sector, are they large enough to offset the damaging impact of taxation or borrowing?
Last but not least, it is important to measure how government spending is financed. The public sector spending is only pro-growth if the net benefit is large enough to compensate for the economic damage caused by taxation. The answer, of course, depends on the tax and how it is collected. Even very important and effective forms of government spending, for instance, might be net negatives if they are financed by higher tax rates on personal income. But those same types of public sector spending might be economically justifiable if financed by a low-rate tax on consumption. The three-part test obviously is simplified. In many cases, the economic damage of government activity extends beyond the impact of diverting resources away from the private sector and the cost of raising revenue. Certain government regulations, for instance, impose heavy costs on the private sector. Likewise, programs to subsidize education, healthcare, housing and retirement generally reduce incentives to save. That has a negative impact on economic performance above and beyond the effects discussed above. Another issue is the extent to which government activity encourages the misallocation of private resources. Many industries now assign some of their most capable people to tasks such as complying with government rules and lobbying for government favors. The nation's economy surely would be more prosperous if these people could use their skills in productive ways.
The Laffer curve.
The short analysis above provides a useful framework for understanding the role of taxation in government spending. However, there are three further policy issues that deserve a brief mention, starting with the Laffer curve. Most politicians naively assume that there is an automatic and fixed relationship between tax rates and tax revenues, so they think they can double tax revenues if they double tax rates. This is a flawed approach, since it overlooks the fact that taxpayers can change their behavior in response to new incentives. The Laffer curve shows that the government will collect zero revenue at a zero tax rate, but that it will also collect zero revenue when the tax rate is 100%. After all, few people will produce if government seizes all their earnings. The revenue maximizing tax rate obviously is somewhere between 0% and 100%. A key point is that the growth maximizing tax rate is lower than the revenue maximizing tax rate. Economic research shows that the long-run revenue maximizing tax rate is probably around 30%. The growth maximizing tax rate, by contrast, will be much lower.
Keynesian stimulus.
During the 1930s, economist John Maynard Keynes argued that a weak economy could be boosted if the government borrowed money and spent it. According to the theory, this new spending would put money in people's pockets and the recipients of the funds would then spend the money and boost the economy as cash began circulating. The Keynesians also said that some tax cuts would have the same impact since the purpose is to have the government borrow and somehow put the money in the hands of people who will spend it. Keynesian ideas have a rather glaring logical fallacy. They overlook the fact that in the real world, government can't inject money into the economy without first taking money out of the economy. Any money that the government puts in the economy's right pocket is money that is first removed from the economy's left pocket. There is no economic boost since every dollar that is spent on a stimulus package is a dollar that the government first must borrow from private credit markets. Keynesianism doesn't boost national income, it merely redistributes it. Real-world evidence also indicates Keynesian stimulus does not work. President Hoover and Roosevelt tried the policy in the 1930s and it did not work. Japan tried the policy in the 1990s and it did not work. And it has not worked this decade for politicians in many nations, including the United Kingdom and the United States.
The Rahn curve.
Just as there is a Laffer curve showing the tax rate that maximizes revenues, there is also a Rahn curve that seeks to identify the level of government spending that maximizes growth. The Rahn curve is based on the notion that there is very little economic growth or activity when there is no government. But as government begins to spend money and provide sound institutions and public goods, this enables a market economy to grow and prosper. At a certain point, however, governments begin to spend money on transfer programs and consumption programs. These types of spending tend to undermine economic performance. It may also be true that spending of all kinds becomes less efficient as governments become larger. Research suggests that the growth maximizing level of government may be about 20% of economic output, or perhaps even less based on long-run historical data. This is very far below the level of spending in North American and European nations.
Conclusion. High-tax economies will lose out.
Government spending is a major part of almost all advanced economies. There are a few small government economies such as Hong Kong, but many nations, especially in Europe, now have very large governments. Even the United States has become more like Europe under Bush and Obama. The evidence indicates that this shift to bigger government has serious economic consequences. A larger burden of government diverts resources from the productive sector of the economy and results in a more costly tax regime. In a competitive global economy, nations with excessive spending and high taxes will lose jobs and investment to countries with more responsible levels of spending and low taxes.